Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're completely tearing down the idea that saving water is just about, fixing a leaky pipe under your sink. Instead, we're digging into some absolutely fascinating source materials, things like operational field guides and compliance audits, to reveal the massive, staggering scale of industrial water threats. More importantly, we're going to break down exactly how communities are organizing to fight back. So if you're into structured, highly data-driven defense strategies, you're definitely in the right place.
Here's our game plan for today. We're hitting 5 key areas. Number 1, the industrial water threat. 2, hard science baseline monitoring. 3, tactical regulatory legal intervention. 4, the sovereign veto strategy. And 5, uniting the watershed community. Let's dive right in.
All right, Section 1, the industrial water threat, and specifically, the sheer scale of the problem.
To build a real effective defense, we have to grasp the true size of industrial encroachment. Think about the number $231 million. That represents the capital threat vector of the Questa Green hydrogen facility, which is a specific, crazy case study detailed in our source blueprint. This project literally aimed to draw up to 100 acre-feet of clean aquifer water per year from a fragile region. And get this, that region was already facing a 36,000 acre-foot surface water deficit. The blueprint makes it super clear. When your town is staring down a heavily funded infrastructure project like that, standard conservation advice just isn't going to cut it to protect the water table. It's a total David and Goliath situation, which requires a massive strategic shift. The classic corporate playbook is all about externalizing environmental costs and weaponizing decades of drawn-out litigation. To actually win, the citizen counter playbook has to completely pivot away from reactive lawsuits. You have to focus entirely on preemptive, administrative blocking, and highly tactical protests. The goal is to stop a problematic project cold, long before a single shovel hits the dirt.
Moving right along to Section 2, hard science baseline monitoring, or basically, establishing your telemetry.
You can't just fight this stuff with emotion. You have to establish your own hard science telemetry. One critical, actually let's call it a physical vulnerability, is something known as cap integrity. This refers to those protective soil layers built over historically contaminated sites. The source documents point to a real-world example in Questa, New Mexico, where there's a fragile 2-foot Superfund soil cap sitting right over toxic tailings. The localized risk is terrifying. Heavy grading machinery rolling in for a new project could easily puncture that cap, creating an instant pathway for toxins to leach straight into the aquifer below. And honestly, you absolutely cannot blindly trust corporate safety records. For example, an environmental compliance audit in our sources looked at a civil contractor doing major earthwork, and it found a shocking 50% out-of-service rate for their vehicles and drivers, basically a coin flip. When developers start bringing extremely heavy, potentially faulty machinery into hypersensitive zones, that transit and operational safety data becomes a crucial piece of the community's defense toolkit.
So how do you actively monitor these risks? Well, you execute specific independent actions. Our sources recommend setting up a community-led data repository of well records, getting volunteers to conduct independent water quality testing upstream and downstream, and literally deploying real-time dust monitors. By establishing this completely indisputable pre-construction baseline, local stakeholders pull off something brilliant. They make it legally impossible for developers to later claim that new contamination or water disruptions were just pre-existing conditions.
Which brings us to Section 3, tactical regulatory legal intervention. This is all about weaponizing the data.
Having that baseline data is amazing, but it's really only half the battle. The next step is weaponizing it within the crazy web of federal, state, and local regulations. To keep from getting totally overwhelmed, the strategy documents recommend using an issue tree model. It cleanly splits the problem into 2 distinct branches. On one side, you've got technical and engineering arguments, like auditing hydrogeology data. On the other side, civic and regulatory arguments, like filing formal OSHA complaints or forcing public comment extensions. It's literally divide and conquer, letting you fight winnable battles based on whatever specific skills your volunteers happen to have.
Okay, moving to Section 4, the sovereign veto strategy, focusing on legally binding power. Because sometimes just delaying a project isn't enough. Communities need tools with absolute legally binding power. Take the Office of the State Engineer, or OSE, protest trigger. It's an incredibly smart sequential mechanism. Step 1, a permit notice for a water transfer is published. Step 2, a strict 30-day legal window opens. Step 3, citizens rapidly file a standing protest showing how their own wells will be impaired.
And step 4, the result, a complete administrative freeze. You instantly lock that permit into contested hearings, totally killing a project's momentum by using the state's own regulatory rules against them.
On top of that, local governance tools can act as uncompromising legal shields. The blueprint points to the Acequia Shield in New Mexico. These historic local water boards actually hold political subdivision status, which gives them the statutory authority to formally say no to unvetted water rights transfers. Municipal ordinances work the exact same way. The source cites a 1995 drilling ban in the village of Cuesta that straight up criminalizes unauthorized well drilling. The playbook stresses that corporate developers cannot easily sidestep these deeply embedded, highly localized legal roadblocks.
And finally, Section 5, uniting the watershed community, because we need a unified front.
Because honestly, all this technical data and all these clever legal loopholes are completely meaningless without a unified community to wield them. To rally your neighbors or make a pitch to a city council, the strategy materials suggest adapting elite corporate frameworks into a 5-part community narrative. You clearly lay out the situation, the complication threatening it, the future state you want, the strategy to get there, and the immediate execution steps for the volunteers. They also heavily emphasize the pyramid principle. Whether you're submitting a regulatory letter or speaking at a town hall, you always deliver your bottom-line conclusion right out of the gate, followed by the supporting technical data. It guarantees that busy officials immediately grasp your core demand.
Also, controlling information is absolutely vital to keeping everyone united. Standard communication channels can be slow or, frankly, monitored, so the Defense Blueprint strongly advises setting up decentralized communication strategies. We're talking about hosting structured technical dashboards, using anonymous drive distribution for sensitive documents, and even setting up off-grid LoRa-based mesh networks. This isn't just paranoia, it's operational security. It keeps advocacy coordinators protected from corporate tracking or those targeted legal harassment campaigns known as SLAPP suits. I really want to highlight this quote from the Defense Blueprint because it hits the nail on the head. Protecting constitutional rights requires a synchronized system of systems where legal protests, secure communications, and local ordinances act as interlocking shields. That perfectly captures the core philosophy. Localized watershed defense can't just be a single petition or one angry protest. It has to be this holistic, multi-layered operation.
So we've walked through this intense tactical blueprint for protecting local water. The main takeaway here is that surviving an industrial threat relies entirely on rigorous, independent monitoring to set a baseline, combined with aggressive, smart legal intervention. Think about the hidden vulnerabilities in your own community's water infrastructure right now. Are you prepared to move beyond just taking shorter showers and actually execute a data-driven defense? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.